a long time ago now, I went to Vietnam, and you know the Golden Hands Bridge. It's very famous, but it's these two big stone hands that hold on to the bridge. And it's in the Ba Na Hills Park, and it boasts some of the best views in the world. But when I went, it was so rainy and foggy that we saw nothing. And it made for some really cool photos because it was like all this mist and fog and these two giant stone hands coming out of the mist and fog with this big bridge that you're standing on. Um,
Wow.
but I have to go back so I can see what I missed.
uh, you can this is like the Vietnam War vets back in Nam when I was
Back
back
in
in
Nam.
Nam. You have
It
to go
is
back in
way
Nam so
too
you can
tempting.
what?
When you go to Vietnam, it's way too tempting to throw in things like back in Nam or good morning, Vietnam.
You have to go back to Nam so you can say when I was back in Nam.
When I was back in Nam.
Drive your Lamborghini.
Ooh, okay. It's probably significantly cheaper to do so there too. Just saying. I think it's called the High Van Pass. I could be mispronouncing that, but it's a very popular motorcycle trail in Vietnam. I think it's from like the midpoint to further south. And we had my group and I had the experience of going on that trail. But I can imagine in a Lamborghini, it would be excellent.
I looked up the Great Inca Road in South
Mm.
America. Do you know anything about that?
I've heard of it,
The
yeah.
Great Inca Road or the Great Inca Trail. The Incas, they had made thousands of kilometers of trails and roads and bridges, and it was phenomenal, the infrastructure they had for that. The I don't know what they called the head person, chief, king, whatever they were. They set all this stuff up. They had I think it's Choskeys is the way you might pronounce it, Chasqui, and these were typically young teenage boys who would run about 5 kilometers like with a message, and they had all these Chosky huts set up so that they could deliver these messages quickly. The young teenage boys ran the fastest over short distances. It's sort of like the Pony Express. The Mongolians had a system set up with semi-wild horses too, where these horses in the Pony Express in the States would just run for shorter distances, and then they'd get off and get a fresh horse. It was like this with the boys. They would just run with these messages or whatever they were carrying, small packages, and they would get these messages across vast distances very quickly. And
Mm.
yeah, they had um, buildings along the way, stone buildings for resources, usually like for armies or for food supplies, grain supplies, whatever food they had that were stored. It was a phenomenal infrastructure. And you can still see a lot of the road still there, like the stone bridges, the steps. And it was the thing that really got me though was some of the bridges they made. They had these
Mm.
large suspension bridges, and they said the the architecture for those rivaled what was in Europe at the time. And just
Wow.
yeah, like I've Googled pictures of the Inca bridges in South America back when there's some drawings of them. I don't think those large bridges, I don't think that the photography existed when those bridges still existed when Europeans got there and started drawing them. But really impressive. You could take uh, cart like wagons with horses across them. Large, like I don't know if they were 100 feet or 100 meters across, but big, thick, like feet wide cables of just whatever they use ropes to make these. Just unbelievable. I didn't know that whole exist. I mean, they had the not the pyramids, but like the Machu Picchu and all the other not I don't know if they're temples or whatever, but pyramid-like structures. It's yeah, it was quite something to see. It was those bridges really captivated me though. Yeah.
No kidding. Wow, it's so impressive the history that exists from then that we can still look back onto now, because of how just so efficient and digital everything is, just to see the difference in what was then versus now.
There's a thing called analog, I think it's like analog living, whatever you call it. Gen Zs are big on that. And it's all about going back to simpler times, like using your like no phone, listening to records, writing letters, all these things that were in the old days, like just putting the phone away, getting offline.
Mhm.
And I think about more about that these days, so I'm 54, so when the internet came along, it was this big new thing, and get on board with it. It's are you on Facebook? Are you on Facebook? Are you on social media? Did you see this YouTube video? Have you watched this Netflix show? And it's just cool. It's the way to go. And I'm trying to think, well, how many more tailings ponds are we going to make on the planet? How many more mines are we going to make? How many
Mm.
more think, how much more are we going to dig up? And I'm thinking, how many more phones am I going to buy in my life? I know it's just one phone, but to everybody, it's just one phone. It's just
That's
one
so
laptop.
true.
It's just one device. It's just one more. That's all it is to everybody. But we're millions and billions of us are saying just one more. And, will this be my last cell phone? Will this be my last laptop? Was that my last car? All these things. Can I go back to a simpler time? And spending time with people, just spending time with friends and family. I just went to a funeral. My uncle passed away, and in March, and being with family, it's nice. And just being with other people in person. I like making people laugh. I like banter like this, just shooting the breeze and having fun. Like I really enjoy this. And it's I'd like to get more of that in my life because we can just sit at home and stare at a screen.
Mm.
And as much as I enjoy doing that, I can do that for long hours. But I'm thinking, well, maybe I should just step away from it more. And what would I do? What would I do if I just started writing? If I got rid of my laptop? I don't know if you can live in Canada and not have an email address for, I don't
Mm.
know, taxes or whatever we need to have an email address for these days. Can we still do that? Can you be a Canadian? Are there Canadians who don't have an email address and they do everything by like landline? I don't know. I don't know.
That's a really good point. I feel like it would be next to impossible to be fully offline. Because you're right, the CRA contacts you through their online platform now. So to look at your taxes and your pay stubs from work and so many different things, it's all digital. So many places have cut out the paper statements that they used to offer as well, including banks. Everyone's trying to go digital. Um, yeah, I guess it'd be such a challenge to see if you could completely remove yourself from the digital world. Like my job would not even be possible. Um, I write using a computer for uh, other people's businesses that's then posted for other people using computers to read. So it just be I couldn't imagine. I've often thought about if an EMP hit and we just lost access to all technology,
What's an
the
EM,
regression.
what's an
It's
EMP?
electromagnetic pulse.
Oh, okay.
It Yeah, it's one of those things that's just supposed to shut off all technology.
Okay.
And if that happened, the regression of society would be so interesting to think about. Like my job, for example, instead of writing content for the sake of content so people can read it and so you can advertise people's businesses, but because of AI and the mass production of content and the efficiency required, and it's just at points it makes me wonder, is what I do worthwhile? But if the EMP hit, I would I feel like I would still have a job. It would take time to build back up, and it might be more necessary because instead of content for the sake of content, it would become content news because we need to spread information. and then I would still be writing perhaps, but it would like be a pen and paper. And then we would have to hire a bunch of locals to rush that message from one place to another. And it'd be a lot more journalistic. And even if we did build ourselves up again to the point where it's not just like, heary, heary, war declared, the North attacks the South, run that paper. Eventually it could get to the point where it'd be like, okay, society has rebuilt itself a little bit. There's this really cool ice cream shop and they need more people to buy their ice cream, so spread the word. And then you go and you're like, tell me about all of your 233 flavors. Ah, yes, I see. Ah, very interesting. Let me take down another note here. And then you take back your notes and then you write out this big paper and then you, I don't know, stick it through some kind of scribe or whatever, and then they create many many copies and you send each copy out, and then everyone's like, oh my god, this ice cream is so amazing because of this paper that I read. So that's how I can see my job going from what it is now to EMP to what it could be.
Okay. I look at uh, I look at old, like I love to travel and I'm thinking, how can I travel by foot? And I've looked up before, uh, in the old days, like centuries ago, how people what jobs there were for traveling by foot. And
Mm,
there were peddlers, there were minstrels, there were people who would take literature, whether it was religious or just poetry or jokes or local gossip, like local news. And people really enjoyed having this person come around. They were usually on regular routes. For example, like in Europe, um, there were regular routes that people would have, and once a week, whatever, so and so would come by with news from away, all sorts of things for people to read, or he could tell them by word of mouth. And yeah, I look up things like that from time to time because I love to travel, and I'm thinking, how can I do that in the future if all our modern ways are gone away, or if I just want to do
mm.
it anyway, and even though we keep doing having our modern ways, how can I do that in a low carbon way just for me alone, It's yeah. I've looked
One
up
thought I have. Oh,
oh,
go ahead.
well, I've looked up sustainable bicycles. There's bicycles made of bamboo.
Ah,
I think there's probably always still a little bit of metal in bicycles. I saw a photo from New Brunswick, this inventor guy from New Brunswick in Canada, like in the 1800s or something. He made a bicycle out of wood. And it kind of looked like he got the wood like from driftwood off the side of the river.
oh, that's
It
so
was kind of,
cool.
yeah, it's a really, I should find that book again. And I wanted to get a photo of it from the book. Really neat looking bike. But yeah, you can get sustainable tires, like tires made from whatever more sustainable material, like rubber, like more rubber instead of like
Yeah.
chemicals and whatnot. So yeah, that's a thing. Um, yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna say, and I'm actually so glad you went first because it improves upon the idea. I was gonna say, the an idea that you could have for that future activity job that allows you to travel more. If you got a horse or a bamboo bike and attached a little trailer to it, and you created little wares like figurines or walking sticks or whatever you're into. And then you could travel and sell the things in all the different places you go as little knickknacks and be a part of markets and events and craft fairs and all kinds of things along those lines. In the past, I feel like that would have been more general store type, where like maybe a porter or a salesman of some kind loads up his basically the contents of a shop into his carriage and then takes it from one town to another town, where then the people in that town who don't necessarily have access to other towns can get the goods that they need. But you could make it, because we're so widespread grocery stores and pharmacies, etc., everywhere, 15-minute communities. Um, you could create something that's maybe not a need, but a desirable want. And it's your own local personal thing. And then you just go from place to place. And if you built up enough of a community around what it is you're doing, you probably wouldn't even need the internet for advertising because word of mouth is the best marketing there is.
Yeah, I think about that sometimes. Like if I just started something like that, would people want to buy from me, or would they label me as like, yeah, don't talk to that guy. He's not thinking straight.
Be
Or would people say,
a
I love
little
what
above.
would people say that's a neat idea. I'd like to do that. I'd like to help support you. This is a better way to go with less resources.
Hmm.
I think about like that's the Pony Express had satchels on their bags for letters and mail, and they delivered things that way. They had special ones for that, and the indigenous in North and South America, they had routes. Like the Great Inca Trail was like a route that probably followed the original footpaths from there. I don't know when they made the Great Inca Trail, how long it took to build. Was it like a thing like the Great Wall of China, like it took centuries to build, or if they did it quickly, I don't know, 10, 20 years or something. I don't know how long, I should Google that. But there were lots of footpaths in, like, for example, North America. I found a map of California back with a lot of the indigenous trails, footpaths that they had before the Europeans got there, and all sorts of footpaths going everywhere. And they say a lot of the highways in North America here, the routes follow or roughly follow those footpaths, like a lot of them along riverbeds, for example. And, it's kind of neat thinking when we go to these places that a lot of the times it was when we're driving down this highway through maybe it's a remote wilderness area for 50K or some 50 kilometers or something. Well, we could be thinking, wow, nobody's been here before, but there could have been for thousands and thousands of years people walking down that exact same underneath you, underneath the pavement on the bank of a river, this footpath going for that 50
Yeah.
kilometers, whatever, thousands and thousands and thousands of people walking that same footpath for thousands and thousands of years. It's
Yeah.
it's neat to think about that because as a Canadian, I wasn't taught to think about all this stuff, and we didn't talk much about Indigenous life and what it was like before the Europeans got there. And like my hometown, I think about, well, what were before we got here, this little seaside town of 2,000 people, what did the town look like before we put any roads or buildings here? What trees were growing here? What did it look like? Were they big trees? Was it a meadow? Was it marshland? Was it, what did it look like here? What are the accounts? What kind of trees were there here? Were they beech? Were they maple? Were they oak? Were they evergreen? Were they whatever? And what flowers were here? What happened? Who think of all the thousands of people who lived there because it was an indigenous community lived there for thousands of years. How many people lived there?
Hmm.
Thousands and thousands of people over thousands of years living in that same spot. And we think, well, our town was founded in I think 1792 or something like that, 1784, and that's what we talk about when the town was founded. Well, there's a lot going on there before we ever got there.
No
It's neat to
kidding.
think about. There's a
Yeah.
book, I forget the book, but he talks about how um, when Canada was made, this isn't to do with Indigenous, but when Canada was made, we brought a lot of the history over. He talks about the Scottish. He says the Scottish had a huge influence on Canada, and he can go back to Scotland like over the last, like in like the year 1000 or the year 700. He said, here's an event that happened in, I don't know, 754 in Scotland, and they made these laws, and this is how it affects Canada today.
Mm.
Here's this thing that happened in the year 900 or 1000 or 1100 or something in Scotland. This is why Canada is the way it is today, because of these rules, because of these things going on. It was a fascinating book. I think it was called something like How the Scots Invented Canada or something. But that was neat. He says
Oh.
most people think Canadian history ends when we first got here, but it goes way back before in Europe, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. Well, considering most Canadians are made out of a blend of European amongst other culture, like my background on my dad's side is Scottish and English, and on my mom's side is German and Italian. So that's just basically everywhere but Canada, but I'm born and raised Canadian, as are both my parents. And I'm pretty sure their parents too. Um, but yeah, a lot of our history is this more organic, oral and wood and all of this stuff that biodegrades over time. So we don't have the same type of history that other places like Scotland would, but we definitely have a lot of influence from those places. I can see how even long before, maybe it was a mix of indigenous and European culture that created what we are, for sure.
Thanks for the conversation, Matthew. High
Yeah, thanks, Morgan.
five.
Tune in next time to see where our conversation keeps going.
And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe.